Let me start with four digits, 7,700. On May 10th, 2026, an F-35A Lightning II was conducting a combat sortie over the Gulf of Oman, 73 days into a conflict that has systematically destroyed Iran's conventional naval capability, disabled its oil tankers, struck its underground arsenal, and is now consuming $500 million of Iranian revenue every single day. At some point during that mission, the pilot reached for the transponder panel and manually entered those four digits. The aircraft appeared briefly on civilian flight tracking applications. It banked hard toward UAE airspace. The transponder went dark. The aircraft landed at Al Dhafra Air Base. By the following morning, the Iranian consulate general in India had posted a public declaration. We shot it down. Project Freedom is collapsing. America is hiding its losses. The Iranian propaganda machine was running at full operational capacity before that aircraft had even finished its approach to the runway. Here is the single operational fact that dismantles that entire narrative. And pay close attention to this because it reveals something important, not just about this specific incident, but about the institutional psychology of the regime that constructed the story around it. You do not squawk 7,700 when you take battle damage in an active combat environment. That four-digit code is not automatic. It is not triggered by weapons impact. It is not triggered by systems failure from an external event. It is not triggered by anything that happens to the aircraft from the outside. It requires the pilot to manually reach up and type those four digits into the transponder panel. It is a deliberate, conscious, intentional decision made because the pilot has determined that he needs the specific operational benefit that squawking 7,700 provides. Immediate notification to every radar facility and air traffic control station within range that his aircraft has a problem and requires priority landing access. Cleared approach, no holds, no standard separation procedures, a friction-free path to the runway. Now think about what a pilot who has actually taken battle damage from an Iranian weapon system over the Gulf of Oman does next. He does not reach up and broadcast his position, altitude, emergency status, and approximate location to every receiver within range, including every Iranian military radar facility actively monitoring that airspace. He does not announce on a platform visible to civilian tracking websites that his aircraft has a problem to the adversary that just created the problem. He exits the threat environment at maximum available speed. He communicates through encrypted, frequency-hopped military communication systems that are completely invisible to adversary electronic collection. He manages the situation through the classified procedures that exist for exactly this scenario. He does not light himself up on Flight Radar 24. The 7,700 squawk is the unmistakable signature of a pilot managing a maintenance fault through entirely normal civil-military aviation coordination. The transponder going dark when the aircraft entered UAE airspace is standard operational security. Military aircraft approaching active bases during combat operations switch off their transponders so civilian tracking systems cannot read their approach heading, altitude profile, and destination. This is not concealment of losses. This is basic operations. The Iranian consulate general declared victory over a maintenance emergency. The phone call from an Iranian radar facility confirming their weapon system produced a combat kill will never come, because the pilot typed those four digits himself. But set the propaganda aside entirely, because what that F-35 was actually doing over the Gulf of Oman before the maintenance fault interrupted its mission is the question that matters far more than what any consulate posted on social media. And the answer tells you more about where this conflict is heading than any Iranian information operation. The F-35A carries a sensor capability architecture that the Iranian coastal defense infrastructure was simply not designed to operate against. Not because Iran is unsophisticated, they're not, but because the technology gap between what this aircraft can do and what any adversary short of a near-peer competitor can detect or counter is genuinely generational. The APG-81 Active Electronically Scanned Array Radar is the most capable multi-mode tactical sensor system ever installed in a production fighter aircraft. Its synthetic aperture radar ground mapping mode generates imagery at resolution sufficient to identify individual vehicle-sized objects concealed under camouflage netting from ranges that keep the aircraft entirely beyond the engagement envelope of every coastal missile system remaining on the Iranian coastline. The Iranian coast defense operators cannot shoot at what they cannot range, and they cannot range what they cannot see. The F-35's synthetic aperture mapping sees through the camouflage at standoff distances where no coastal battery can respond. The electro-optical targeting system adds a forward-looking infrared capability whose detection range for thermal signatures, engine heat, recently operated mechanical systems, the residual thermal pattern of covered boat storage facilities, is the specific capability that makes concealment of fast attack boat staging areas operationally inadequate against this aircraft. A fast attack boat that was operated within the past several hours retains measurable engine heat even after shutdown and concealment under netting or inside a covered coastal shelter. The sensors detect that thermal signature, record the coordinates. The targeting database grows. Every sortie adds to it. The electronic warfare system passively monitors the entire electromagnetic spectrum across the aircraft's coverage range without emitting a single detectable signal. It records every radar emission, every radio frequency transmission, every electronic signal associated with the command and control infrastructure that makes a coordinated fast attack boat swarm function as a coherent military force rather than a collection of independently uncoordinated hulls moving in the same general direction. Here is why that passive collection matters specifically. You cannot coordinate 130 speedboats in two formations without command and control communications. Those communications are electromagnetic signals. Electromagnetic signals are what the F-35's passive systems collect, catalog, and precisely geolocate without the Iranian network ever knowing the collection is occurring. The specific frequencies IRGC coastal commanders are using to communicate with their boat crew stations, the radar activation patterns at coastal surveillance positions, the electronic signature of every node in the command architecture that converts individual boats into a coordinated threat. All of it recorded, all of it geo-referenced, all of it feeding the comprehensive physical map of the maritime threat infrastructure that a resumed strike campaign needs before it can address that infrastructure decisively rather than reactively. The mission that F-35 was executing before the maintenance fault interrupted it was intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance collection against the Iranian coastal fast attack boat infrastructure, finding where the boats are hidden, finding where they are fueled and maintained, finding where the command nodes that coordinate them are located, finding where the coastal missile systems protecting the staging areas are positioned, building the target list. This matters because it exposes the fundamental difference between two approaches to the Mosquito Fleet problem that this conflict has been navigating since Project Freedom launched. The reactive approach, destroy boats when they appear in open water, has produced real results. 7 fast attack boats on the ocean floor. The May 4th engagement that eliminated 6 in approximately 12 minutes. But the IRGC's fast attack inventory, which began this conflict at approximately 1,000 hulls, dispersed across dozens of coves and coastal hiding positions along 120 kilometers of Iranian coastline, cannot be reduced to zero through individual open water engagements. Every boat destroyed in the water represents one engagement. Every boat still concealed in a coastal shelter represents a future threat that the reactive approach has not yet addressed. And the boats hiding in those shelters are not participating in the engagements that are generating the documented kill count. The preemptive approach, Build a complete targeting database through sustained ISR collection, then strike the staging infrastructure before the boats disperse into swarm geometry. Addresses the problem at the logistics layer rather than the tactical engagement layer. A boat destroyed in a coastal cave before its crew receives a launch order is not participating in the swarm that overwhelms the point defense systems. A command node eliminated before it can coordinate simultaneous multi-vector approach eliminates the saturation attack architecture before it can execute. The fuel depot that cannot be replaced. The maintenance facility that cannot rebuild the engines. The communication node that cannot broadcast the launch command. The F-35 ISR missions over the Gulf of Oman are building the database that makes the preemptive approach operationally executable rather than theoretically viable. Every sortie, including the one interrupted by a maintenance fault that Iran declared a victory, adds geo-referenced targets to a targeting package whose completion precedes the resumed bombing campaign. The Iranian consulate general who declared victory over 4 digits is going to discover what the collection was building when those 4 digits worth of interrupted mission data is completed by the next sortie. And the one after that, and the ones after that. Now pull back from the F-35 to the broader diplomatic and strategic picture, because May 10th through 12th produced a sequence of developments that constitute the formal end of the diplomatic phase of this conflict. Iran spent 4 days, some accounts say longer, constructing their counterproposal. 4 days of deliberation at the highest institutional levels to produce the document they believed represented their strongest negotiating position. When that proposal reached Washington, the President of the United States read part of it and stopped. The formal characterization posted publicly, totally unacceptable. The language following it, so-called representatives, is the institutional dismissal register. It does not engage the counterproposal as a serious offer. It questions whether the people presenting it have the actual authority to represent the Iranian position at all, which, given the IRGC's demonstrated independence from Iran's diplomatic apparatus, is less a rhetorical device than an accurate operational assessment. What was in that proposal that produced the totally unacceptable response? Iran demanded full sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, war reparations from the United States, the lifting of all sanctions simultaneously, an immediate end to the naval blockade, and then, on nuclear concessions, the Central American demand, the non-negotiable requirement at the core of every American statement about what this conflict is ultimately about. Iran pushed any discussion to a later, unspecified, uncommitted future date. But here's the specific detail that makes the nuclear dimension of this counterproposal not merely inadequate, but strategically disqualifying. The International Atomic Energy Agency has confirmed that Iran is currently holding approximately 440 kilograms of highly enriched uranium, enriched to 60%. To understand what that number means operationally, civilian nuclear power plants operate on fuel enriched to between 3 and 5%. 60% enriched uranium has no civilian nuclear application that justifies either the enrichment program or the stockpile Iran has accumulated. The technical distance between 60% enrichment and the 90% threshold that constitutes weapons-grade material is one short additional step. The weaponization timeline from the current stockpile, once the political decision to proceed is made, is measured in weeks, not years, weeks. Iran's counterproposal refused to negotiate the stockpile in any form, not reduce it, not transfer it to a third country, not convert it to a form from which weapons fabrication is more technically demanding, not subject it to enhanced monitoring or snap inspections beyond current IAEA access. The 440 kilograms stay in Iran, under IRGC custody, at near weapons-grade enrichment, without constraint, while the United States lifts the blockade, the sanctions, and pays reparations. This is not a negotiating position designed to be negotiated toward a settlement. This is a document designed to consume time while the ceasefire holds. While the 3 to 4 month endurance window the CIA's assessment identified ticks forward, while Iran attempts to reconstitute what 73 days of military operations have degraded. The Truth Social post that followed the totally unacceptable declaration is the communication whose content matters more than its medium. 47 years of Iranian behavior, itemized in presidential language, the cash transfers, the billion-dollar currency deliveries, the roadside bombs that killed American service members, the 42,000 protesters killed by a regime that received that funding, and the conclusion, they will be laughing no longer. Presidential Truth Social posts in this conflict have functioned as operational announcements in the specific register that precedes kinetic action. When the previous post stated the bombing will start at a much higher level and intensity, Bandar Abbas and Keshem Island were struck. They will be laughing no longer is the declarative conclusion that closes 47 years of accounting and opens the operational chapter that follows it. Iran's official response to that post: it doesn't matter at all. No one in Iran drafts plans to please Trump. This is the institutional bravado of a regime posting a taunt in response to a totally unacceptable rejection from the commander-in-chief of the largest conventional military force in human history. While the 40-day oil storage countdown is running, while an Israeli strike plan is on Washington's desk, while the MV Ocean Trader is positioned in the Indian Ocean, while Space Force is watching Iran's uranium stockpile at badge number precision, while F-35 ISR missions are completing a targeting package that maps 120 kilometers of Iranian coastline, it doesn't matter at all is the performance of an institution that has chosen propaganda for its domestically isolated audience over the operational calculation that the actual military situation requires. The Israeli strike plan that has entered public analytical discussion defines the scope of what resumed bombing looks like in ways that distinguish it from every previous phase of this conflict, and that the institutional response of it doesn't matter at all is specifically failing to reckon with. 1 to 2 weeks of sustained strikes with possible extension. The targeted elimination of IRGC Commander-in-Chief Ahmad Vahidi and other senior command figures. An urgent communication between Netanyahu and Washington regarding the plan's substance and timing. The coordination mechanism through which the American and Israeli operational architectures that executed their previous joint campaign together are being aligned for the resumed campaign. Vahidi's targeting represents the decapitation objective that compound strikes against infrastructure cannot achieve. Physical facilities can be rebuilt over months and years. Command structures can be rebuilt over similar timescales. But the specific individuals who constitute the institutional apex of the IRGC's operational coordination cannot be replaced on the timeline that matters for what the next phase of this conflict is designed to accomplish. The IRGC command structure is already operating without the Supreme Leader's direct guidance. Mojtaba Khamenei reportedly incapacitated in a bunker or secure location, alive but with a condition unknown, attempting to project authority he no longer holds at the level his father held. The naval commander's death in the conflict's early phase already created a command vacuum that has produced the strategic incoherence visible in the decision-making record. The May 7th through 8th assault that opened the underground missile cities and lost them in a single night. The shadow fleet strategy that assumed America would sink rather than stop the tankers. The counterproposal that spent 4 days producing a document characterized as garbage. Add Vahidi's elimination in the first wave of resumed strikes, and the IRGC's coordinating institutional apex disappears at the precise moment when economic pressure from the oil storage countdown and military pressure from resumed bombing are simultaneously compressing every dimension of its operational capacity. Inside Iran, a dimension of this conflict that external analysis consistently underweights is running in parallel with all of the above. The regular Iranian army, the Artesh, has been watching this conflict from a specific institutional vantage point. Their soldiers have been deployed to frontline positions. Their officers have watched the IRGC's institutional position degrade under combined military defeat and financial exhaustion. And the treatment their troops have received, sent to frontline positions with approximately 10 rounds of ammunition each, used as expendable positioning by IRGC commanders whose own units were positioned differently, has been generating a loyalty calculation whose conclusion is not predetermined. The Iran-Iraq war veterans who form the senior leadership of the regular army are the generation whose institutional memory includes 1988, the moment Khomeini described accepting the ceasefire as drinking poison and accepted it anyway because the operational reality made continuation impossible. They know what that calculation feels like from inside an institution that has to face it honestly rather than perform around it. Mustafa Salami, the older brother of the IRGC commander-in-chief killed in Israeli strikes last year, a regular army veteran of the Iran-Iraq war, a figure who bridges the institutional boundary between the Artesh and the IRGC in the specific advisory role his current position provides, is the person whose institutional access and historical memory make him the potential vector through which operational reality reaches the decision-making process that the IRGC's hardline faction is determined to prevent from operating clearly. Whether that institutional memory is enough to produce something different from a fifth proposal that looks like the fourth one, that is the question that determines whether the resumed bombing authorizes before Iran has a chance to construct an alternative. The coalition architecture assembling around the American position has in the past week become considerably more coherent and considerably more capable than the Iranian strategy of maximum pressure on Gulf partners was designed to produce. The Charles de Gaulle carrier group is positioned in the Red Sea. Gulf states have restored basing access that enhances American strike range and logistics. The UAE, now confirmed as the third direct combatant alongside the United States and Israel, adds a strike axis that Iran cannot publicly attribute to Washington, which specifically degrades the anti-American narrative the information blackout was designed to sustain for the domestic audience. Every Iranian attack on a Gulf partner has hardened rather than fractured the alignment. Every seized vessel flying a flag of a nation Iran cannot afford to alienate has added another actor to the coalition. Every taunt from state media has produced another diplomatic consequence that makes Iran's strategic isolation more rather than less complete. The coalition Iran needed to fracture to make its Hormuz leverage strategy work has instead aligned with increasing coherence. The international community the regime expected to pressure Washington toward concessions is instead applying its pressure in the opposite direction. So here is where every thread in this analysis converges into a single operational picture. The diplomatic phase ended with totally unacceptable. The F-35 ISR missions are completing the targeting package. The Israeli strike plan with command-level targeting is on Washington's desk. The MV Ocean Trader is positioned in the Indian Ocean for what its positioning indicates is pre-mission readiness. Space Force is watching the uranium stockpile at Isfahan at the precision level that distinguishes target monitoring from general surveillance. The 40-day oil storage countdown is running. When it expires, Iran faces the permanent well closure scenario that causes damage measured in years rather than months of recovery time. The president has posted they will be laughing no longer. The boats in their coastal shelters along 120 kilometers of Iranian coastline are about to discover what the F-35 that the Iranian consulate general declared shot down was actually building a map of. The Iranian officials who said it doesn't matter at all are about to find out precisely how much it matters when the plan authorized by totally unacceptable is executed against the targeting package the ISR missions have been completing. the enriched uranium, the command structure, the fast attack boat logistics infrastructure, the coastal missile systems protecting the staging areas, the communication nodes that make swarm coordination possible. All of it mapped, all of it geo-referenced, all of it in a targeting database that every additional F-35 sortie, including the ones Iran doesn't know are running because the transponder is dark and no one is squawking 7700, is making more complete. They will be laughing no longer is not a boast. It is a timeline, and the 40 days are running. Tell me what you think in the comments. Does Iran produce a substantively different fifth proposal before the targeting package is complete and Project Freedom Plus authorizes? Or does the IRGC's institutional commitment to performance over calculation hold until the resumed bombing makes the calculation unavoidable? Subscribe and hit the notification bell right now. This is moving faster than any previous phase of this conflict, and we are going to be here with the complete analysis before the mainstream coverage catches up to what's actually happening. Full audio available on Spotify. Don't miss what the next 72 hours produce.